Hi, welcome to the channel. So today we are going to be building a 30 litre moving bed filter for my QT tank. Currently has a static filter of the same size. But it needs a moving bed filter for obvious reasons. Stimulate the growth of good bacteria, and obviously having that good bacteria in the pond per se. So there's a couple of photos here coming up as I explained in one of my last videos on how this is done, and on that video you can see there's some photos of, let's move some stuff out of the way, some photos of where I've cut this drum out, which is along the inner side of that ridge there, and I'll just put that photo up now. What I've then done is I have purchased some of these discs, Perspex discs, no holes in them. You do not want to buy from a supplier that has ready formed holes. These are 3mm thick clear Perspex sheets. Why? Because simply I like to look inside my filters and see what is going on. There's nothing sort of telling me by looking at that potentially there might be any issues. You just do not know. So I like to fit these, which gives me a window into the world of filtration. These are 20cm discs. They're thereabouts, close enough for me. They are, however, actually very well fitting for the purpose of which I've bought them. So once you've cut that on the inside ridge there, I'll get something to point with. I have sausage fingers. So you're cutting on the inside edge at the bottom of that ridge there, all the way around. And if you're lucky, like I was on the first one, the jigsaw naturally followed that contour because of the plate at the bottom of the jigsaw. It basically rubbed up against it, and as this is doing now, and followed it all the way around. Very fortunate. On the opposite side of this lid, so within the valley on the inside, that's a ridge all the way around. I filled that ridge with CT1 because it's my, basically it's, since building the pond, it's my go-to brand, and I do use the high performance heavy thick strong CT1 to form a bed, if I can open it up, for the Perspex to then sit on. So once that valley in there is filled, that plate at 20cm then fits nicely inside it. Not only that, but you get a lip of CT1 coming out, which you can then see and be sure that it has formed a seal. If you're using it for a standard static filter, then you probably don't want it airtight, because it will, on stopping of the pump, suck that right off there if you've got a big enough volume of water pulling on it. The solution is to then install a air release valve, which the manufacturer of the barrels does not supply, but you can buy them from a third-party source on Amazon. They work out to be about £5. I did have one somewhere. There's an image of that being cut out and that lid being fitted and the valve being fitted, and I'll throw that in here now. And this is the anti-crush valve or air admittance valve as it arrives. It's a small little kit that you got to put together, and what I'll do is I'll assemble this now. I've built these before, as I say, and what I did do is I actually upgraded the spring to a more rigid spring to give me a bit more scope in terms of at what degree do I want the mechanism to work. So that is basically the product there, how it's assembled. So you have the top, you have the rubber bush, which gives you a level of air tightness. You then have the body of the unit, which also has 2 fixing holes. I do recommend on Perspex you don't try and put the screws straight into the Perspex, always pilot drill it first. Perspex, as we all know, is a bugger to work with. It's actually very brittle stuff and it takes very little for it to go. So there's a spring which then fits onto that fixing going on. As I say, I do like to upgrade the springs to a more stiffer spring. Apply a washer. There's then a, I think it's M4 locking nuts. Now, bearing in mind that these are a product which the barrel manufacturer are linked to on Amazon, no component on here is stainless steel. Just be mindful of that, they are not stainless steel. So there you go. So what I did do is I have a box with a selection of O-rings, and when fitting it I did apply an O-ring to the outside edge there, going around. I did fit an O-ring inside that little groove there, and then drilled with a Bosch hole saw a diameter that big, which means that O-ring, when it sat up against the Perspex, did actually form a seal of its own. When fitting to the Perspex, I determined center, drilled a 20mm hole with a hole saw, as I said, and I applied CT1 to the perimeter of this unit before screwing it in. And remember, pilot drill your holes in Perspex, otherwise you're going to shatter it. So what I'll do is I'll quickly mark up center. I will drill the 20mm hole, pilot drill it, and then I'll show this being assembled on there. I do have some CT1, but it's the heavy duty stuff, so it probably won't be the prettiest of jobs, but we'll get that connected up. The plan is for me to have this moving bed barrel up and running tomorrow. So tomorrow will involve quite a bit of work being done, including a bit of pipe modification from the static filter down into the moving bed outlet, and there's also an airline to go into this, and that will be achieved by using male and female airline connectors, again through the Perspex. And what I tend to do is use a 15mm I think it's 1/2 inch actually, 3/4 inch rubber seal. I have a pack of varying sizes of gaskets and seals. These are typically used in hose pipes this size, and that should then give me the air tightness once I've drilled a hole through the edge of this plate, which will pass through the airline at 10mm to the air stone inside the moving bed chamber. So let's do the connection for that first, the hole for the air admittance valve first, making sure you get this the right way. So it's also going to be pressured, so that is the correct way up, so it can take air in when you're draining the filters for cleaning, but it will not let water on the pressurized system burst out of the filter barrel. I suppose if you want to, you can do it the other way, bearing in mind that you are going to be filling that with air. So we'll try it that way first. What we don't want is any awkward leaks. In terms of swapping from one to the other, it's a case of undoing the screw and reapplying your CT1. It's no massive job. One of them, I suppose. But what I did want to try and do is, on the return pipe from this, I was planning on using bubbles and air from within the filter to skim out any skimmit. So the waste pipe would have a T coming up and a branch out for a 90 over, which will allow any protein skimmit to basically pass out of the system. The flow returns to the pond, and on that flow, skimmit is produced or filtered out from the air being produced within the moving bed. So I'm trying to get the most out of the unit. Whether or not it works is another thing, but hey ho, I love a bit of engineering, and I'm more than happy to give it a try. Success comes from failure, as they say. Okie dokie, so I have marked up absolute centre as far as measurements go. It's near enough. Marked up the centre of that plate, so I'll be drilling a 20mm hole at that point there, and hopefully I can do this live. No, I don't condone working unsafely. Bit of drift there. These bits are getting none of it. I've probably got sharper bricks, to be honest. Okay, one hole. And now what we need to do is we need to set the unit on it at centre, and we need to mark and drill the 2 fixing points. So I will do that now. I won't be able to do that with the camera rolling, unfortunately. It's very tricky and I need all hands on deck. So I'll do that quickly and come right back. So there's the first hole pilot drilled, and do bear in mind that these screws are very, very, very small, so just be careful, they're easily lost. Again, they're not stainless steel. I presume you can order the same size screws from hardware store, B&Q, Amazon. So the screw literally just takes a bite on that, and you can see by the size of the hole and the head of the thread of the screw, very, very close in size. I think it's 1.5 mil. the drill bit. So the easiest way to do this, I find, is to fit the first screw I did have a screwdriver. So we're going to start to tighten up very slowly. Any resistance, you might need to drill the hole slightly bigger, or just pass the drill bit back through the hole again, just to open it up a little bit. And the reason for doing this is you can align it. You notice I've still got the protective film on it. Whilst I'm building it, I will leave that on just to minimize the scratching. It's not be all and end all, but every little helps. And I also haven't applied the CT1 yet, for the same reason. We'll do that as a sort of last job. We will take that back off, apply the CT1 as a final phase of work, and refit the air admittance valve. So I'll drill the last hole, having lined it up. Nice and slowly, as we all know with Perspex. As we all know with Perspex, it drills better slower than it does if you try and drill it fast. As we all know, drill it fast and it warms very rapidly and it cracks. Drilling it slowly allows the bit to cut through it without causing any damage. So there we go. We don't want to over tighten them either. We've got a good bite on it there. Same amount of screw showing through. And when that's mounted, it will allow air in. Or if you mount it that way, it will allow air out. So if you want to construct this without a inline skimmit remover, if you like, you'd obviously want it that way to allow air to escape. Or on a static filter, the same, you'd want it that way, because when you empty the filter, that will allow air in for the water to drain off to clean the static filter or flush it through, and then subsequently from underside it creates a seal, stopping anything from swapping out, from coming out. I've actually swapped mine over now for the purpose of adding this on. I want maximum pressure going through the pressure filter. I had, as I say, upgraded the spring, so it took a lot more pressure for it to release. So I was getting a solid flow, and if there was too much, water would come out, and that would let me know that I needed to throttle the flow from the 10,000 Evo that I've got on it. Bearing in mind it's only a 500 litre, 450 litre QT tank. It doesn't really need or warrant a 10,000 litre Evo, but it's overpowered, it's not underpowered, and I've throttled it with a 40mm valve. So there you go. So the next job is we're gonna, on the other side, we're going to drill a 10mm hole, which will allow me access to put the jigsaw blade in to cut around the inside edge of this lip. We'll apply the CT1 mastic bead. After removing the protective film, we will affix that, and then we'll let that cure, and I'll probably pick up the rest of the video tomorrow whilst that sets tonight in the office. So before it gets too late, it's now 10 o'clock, the neighbours are partying, so I don't think they're going to be too upset by me jigsawing that out quickly. I can't do this on camera, obviously, because it's very difficult to hold the camera, hold the lid, and also jigsaw inside it. So I'll do that now, come back to you, and before we fit this actually with the CT1, we'll actually install the inline or through airline male female connectors. I have used these before. As you can see, there's already a PTFE on there. If you're using a rubber on there, you probably don't need it. I'm not too worried about it anyway. If there is a bit of air escape, there is. It's not the be all and end all. As long as that turns over. 30 litre barrel, I will be putting about 10 litres in at first, and I'll probably top that up to around 15 to ensure that I've got a good movement on the moving on the media, on the K1 media. I don't want it for any reason becoming a case of it not rotating or not moving. So I think for the benefit of a QT tank, 15 litres in there, half the capacity of the barrel, is probably going to be more than enough or adequate. I will be using a 50 centimetre air stone at the end of a 10 mil airline, which will go through the edge like so. And hopefully with the 15 litres of K1, removing the lid and subsequently that section means the air stone will lift out with the lid without any issues. It will also drop back in and sink to the bottom of the chamber without any issues. It has been thought about. Whether or not it works, I don't know. I've never seen this done on a video, on a how-to video on any koi channels, so this is literally groundbreaking technology we're building. Right, I'll drill that, jigsaw it, and come right back to you. And as if by magic, there you are. So as I say, the jigsaw guide plate, or the base of the jigsaw, the bottom of the jigsaw unit, does actually follow that edge, lip edge there quite well, giving you a pretty good round shape. Voila. Now, as I say, we're going to use this valley profile, if you like, ridge profile, as a bed or a base for the CT1 mastic. It actually cuts almost perfect using that lip edge there on the other side, which is quite handy if you've got poor eyesight or just not very confident on tackling the project. Now, remember which way round you want that air admittance valve, anti-crush valve to work. So I'm going to try and use the air being produced from the air stone to pull out skimmit from a T-junction and a niter. So we'll just remove that bit first. As I say, that will land in that little ridge there nicely with a gap around the edge, which will allow the CT1 or equivalent just to shoot over and form a bit of a seal around the perimeter of that. Visually this will help. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fit the male and female airline sections. Now, an important thing to note with these is it's not a case of measuring that, which is 1/4, I think, 1/4, I think it's a quarter that. The thing to remember these is they actually have a ridge or a lip around the edge, and you won't get a full seating unless your hole is not just that, but that extra lip as well on there. So I'm hoping on this occasion once I've tightened up, that this rubber will compensate for that fact, meaning I can drill to that dimension. So I'm going to go grab a drill bit to marry the size of that, and we're going to see what kind of fit we get. Generally you can tell straight away. Worst case scenario, I suppose you could always remove that and apply a CT1 bead to both sides, and that would, again, I presume, form an air tightness. Now there's a reason I've got two of them, and this is the reason, as you've just seen. So this unit will screw down to everything bar that little ridge. That ridge stops that from going all the way. This unit isn't as deep, and it doesn't go as far down. So thicker materials, thinner materials will determine which type you actually use. Although they look the same, they aren't. They are different. Right, so I'll get my vernier calipers. I'll measure that male thread and drill a hole inside this. I'm going to go for a side measurement, a side penetration, and what I'm going to do is I'll put an elbow on the bottom of the airline to marry up with the center of the barrel, which should then give me a mushroom effect from the middle working out for my rotation. So I'll go and grab that bit and drill that hole. So there's more than one way to skin a cat, as I say. The hole for that, I believe, is something like an 11.5 millimeters. Now the nearest I've got in my little Bosch set is a 10 millimeter. So what I've done is I've used a little gas torch just to warm up the perspex to then feed the male section through. So what I need to do now is let that cool, remove that male section, and then just scrape off the little build-up of perspex lipping to ensure that the female connection is flush. I'll show you what I mean. It's created like a little mushroom effect on the top there. So with that being heated up, it should now be fairly brittle and break away quite easily. Worst case scenario, I'll just put a little bit of sandpaper on it, but I'll go get my craft knife and I'll just ease that off there very carefully. So there we have it. I've taken off the lipping from the unit. It's resulted in a little bit of scratching, but this is a moving bed filter, folks. So as I said, you've got to accommodate for that little lip that it has, and all going well with it being as well fitting as it is, we should achieve air tightness. Should. That is only anti, but I'm willing to bet you that will function airtight. So we're not going for any sort of pressure release on this. We're going to try it to incorporate a Skimmet T and 90, a couple of 90s possibly, coming from outflow. And with the outflow being at the top, the air has got somewhere to go. On cleaning, air has got a potential to go in, which shouldn't result in sucking this plate off the top of there once it is CT1 into position. So we're looking for that to be that way up. So it can suck air in, but it can't push air out. So as I say, on switching the pump off, it'll suck air in anyway. It shouldn't cause it to detach really, I suppose, but we shall see. All good, great endeavours come from a massive failing. So I had the CT1 out today already. Let's get rid of that snot on the end. What we're going to do is apply a nice bead on the drum lid inside this groove, and this should then give us a good seating for the perspex to sit on. So I'm hoping there's enough left in the tube. So we're just going to follow that groove round. Try and keep it as neat as possible. I'll tell you what, it does take some bloody squeezing, this stuff does. And literally the static filter build up to this point is almost identical, with the exception of course, the airline. I didn't put an airline in. I can back flush it through the pump, past the bottom drain, through a T to waste. So doesn't really need an airline to stir it up. I can get my old mitts in there and do it with my hand. Not opposed to doing that myself. So we're pulling air in, we're not letting air out, so that will be that way up. So no air out, but air in. Let's get it in shot. So air in, no air out. So if I fit that way up, that will be, for my use and purpose, correct. So there's the bead. A little bit messy there. I've had to obviously overshoot from where I started with, but the rest of it isn't that bad. Okay, the offering. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for centralising that as best as possible. Let's tuck that there. And what we're going to do is we're going to push it up against the frame of the lid, up until the point we start to squeeze out through that gap there, which is the edge of where we've cut. And what we'll then do is wet us finger, as they say in Yorkshire, to the point whereby we can sort of tool it with our finger, just to smooth it off, just to make sure we've got a nice good seal this side, and we can see where we're sealing this side. It's pretty much the same as you'd fit your pond window if you're following Carl from CWD Ponds. We're just going to gently push it so we've got an even take and an even spread, and you can see where it's coming to the outer edge of the lid this side, so you know how far to take it just by looking at that really. You're just going to tease it till you've got it sort of even. If you don't like CT1, this isn't the video for you. The BBC News has got the live coverage of a politician talking rubbish. Anyway, let's crack on. So you just want to work it all the way around. Where your airline in-out fixing is now situated, which is the only difference between this and the static filter build. Would be a bit problematic for wetting it round and just ensuring that you've got a bit of a seal, but I mean from this side, the back edge of the lid, if you like, you can see you've got a good tack on it and a good take on it, and it's got a good seal on it because there are no bubbles. You've got that little overlap or overrun of CT1 that I was talking about, and you can, if you wish, obviously work that into the lid just to get a bit of extra tack. Me personally, not bothered. And you can, as I say, finger point it around the edges. Squeeze a bit more, just to create that nice little seal from the outside edge. There's a limit of where you can go up to with that, obviously with that airline set up there. Don't worry about any overspill or finger marks with CT1. With a plastic scraper, you can actually get that off very easily. Surprising, it is built-in stuff, but it can actually be cleaned up. So there, as you can see, I've pretty much created good contact on the Perspex lid itself and a nice seal around there, which can be cleaned up with a plastic scraper, which I do happen to have. And in the morrow, when that's dry, we'll be on to the next stage. So the next stage will be determining the points for the tank connectors. I use Cockney Coy's tank connectors. They're the ones I've used from the start of my pond building and continue to use them, as contrary to what the majority of you do, I use Imperial as opposed I use metric rather as opposed to Imperial, and that's because I find Imperial in the UK differs. There does seem to be a variance between Imperial fittings suppliers. For instance, the tank connectors vary from the rest of the pipe and subsequent fittings, and I believe somebody's done a video and they've had a discrepancy of up to 2-point-something millimeters between two Imperial fittings, which you would think would be the same. Ha ha ha, no is the case, because you've got British Imperial, European, and also American, it seems. So there are a few. So I opted for metric, and I use 2 suppliers only for my pipe work. Cockney Coy is the chosen and tested for tank connectors and such like, and then I use Gas and Water UK supplies, presume industrial supplies for water and gas industries for the metric pipe. The only problem is, obviously, with the amount of infrastructure upgrades and building works going on throughout the United Kingdom, getting hold of it is a bit like getting hold of unicorn turd. Very difficult. So anyway, luckily I've got what I need for this little setup. So we're going to let that dry. I ain't going to tie that up. I'm going to leave that as is. Doesn't matter. You're not going to see it. Doesn't really affect how it works. It would just be cosmetic. My OCD has begun to wane after years in the construction industry and looking at the garbage that I look at. So for me, for now, that is it. This is basically part 1 of this video. Part 2 will involve tank connectors airline install, Airstone install, media add, and then I will do obviously the connections to the static filter, which will need to be retrofitting retro connections now, as it's up and running, has been for a few weeks. One of them. Small steps, big progress. Anyway, thanks for watching. Part 2 will be coming up hopefully tomorrow. Thanks for watching, guys.